going to share this quote by John Muir that came up while you were going through this meditation. And the quote is, "One learns that the world, though made, is yet being made, that this is still the morning of creation, that mountains long conceived are now being born, channels traced for coming rivers, basins hollowed for lakes." So I like that quote. I like the idea of it's just getting started. Feels like something's ending that needed to end anyway. But it's still, as far as the earth is concerned, we're still in the morning of creation, always. So thank you all so much for coming this morning. I am so very excited to have Jon Young and Sarah Fontaine with us, our beta testers from last year. And I'll introduce Jon to you, and then he and Sarah are going to talk about their work. And you can then keep your questions maybe, and we'll pepper them at the end. Jon Young has been a leader in the field of nature-based community building for over 40 years. His research into impact and significance of nature on mentoring, human intelligence, spirituality, well-being, and development has influenced thousands of people worldwide. His books include What the Robin Knows, How Birds Reveal the Secrets of the Natural World, and Coyote's Guide to Connecting to Nature. Sarah has been practicing ways of deepening connection with self and nature through psychoeducation, neuroscience, somatics, and energy awareness. Sarah currently offers wildlife tracking courses and pathways for applying neuroscience and energy awareness to nature connection practices. That just makes me really happy. I already told Jon, I'll come visit you. And he said, no, you can do this online. Oh my gosh. Okay. And you can find them and their work at Living Connection First. That's the number 1 ST, where you can find the Connection First principles that represent Jon's lifelong work. So thank you so much, Jon. And I'm going to put you in the spotlight, and you and Sarah can take it away. I'm going to put you both in the spotlight.
Well, you make me sound old. I guess I've been at this for a while. Yeah, hi everybody. It's really nice to see so many friends from our cohort in the past. I realized I miss you when I see your faces. It's really fun. Um, yeah, well, I'm glad you're involved with the Nesting Ambassador process. And I first I met Darsha in 2017 when I presented at a conference that her and 4 Hours put together there. Um, and I was just so impressed with Darsha's research. Well, I'm sure we all are. And then meeting you, Lisa, discovering what a powerhouse you are and what you're doing and linking up in the world. Also, I'm just blown away by Kindred Media as well. I think these two are um, suffering from mad productivity syndrome. They're just amazingly prolific. I don't know how you do it from a farm in Virginia. I've been at this for a few years. In fact, I'm pretty much unemployable because I've been studying deeply this question from 1979. Why are some social coherent groups very connected to the earth and to each other, and why are other social groups at this point in history kind of the opposite of that? And that took me into kind of research where I was combining natural history, psychology, and anthropology, as well as world religions, because I started to realize that religions weren't innocent in the determining the behavior of people. Um, witness some of the things that are going on right now militarily around the world, and let's just kind of let that go for a moment. But I was fascinated by when I was with my extended family who had come over from Poland and Lithuania at the end of the 1800s. They were farmers and they enclaved together as farmers in a rural part of New Jersey because of discrimination. They needed to really kind of look after each other. They were very discriminated against. And so whenever we were with that side of the family, there was so much love and allowance and kindness for the children. And there was all this fun stuff they always had us do outside in nature. You know, they were mushroom hunters, they were deer hunters, they were duck hunters, fishing, trapping. They were doing all these things very close to the land, and mainly because they had to. That's how they lived. Then they, when their older years, they retired by the sea, and then they went to fishing and clamming and crabbing. So, but when that family was together, all the kids just played outside and were very much supported. Well, then I'd go to other families in New Jersey and, you know, other parts of my family that were very much not like that. You didn't feel welcomed. You didn't feel seen. You sort of were seen as these little nuisances underfoot. And in those situations, I remember perceiving the adults as legs with belts and shoes because you didn't look up at them because they never offered anything to you. There was nothing there, right? So even within my bigger family structure, I was seeing there's some cohesion here that really supports the journey of connection, not only to nature but to people. And over here, nice people, obviously they love us, but not they're not there's an element missing. Something hidden in plain view is just not there. So I got fascinated by that. That's why I didn't say culture. Did you hear me say that? I didn't say like this indigenous group has this amazing connection thing, this modern group doesn't. I even within modern life, I'm finding pockets of people who understand connection and support it well. So this is what my research was. Why are some connected and others not? Because it was really obvious to me that the ones that were connected really cared about the earth. And I thought, is there something that I can inject into modern society through working with children that I could learn from connective fields? So I went to study different cultures from around the world because my anthropology professors did not support my thesis, did not believe that I was onto anything. But I actually, I knew in my guts that I knew it was the right trail to follow because I already was a tracker and I knew what it felt like to be on a trail that was hot versus a trail that was cold. And frankly, the anthropologists were trying to force me down some cold trails. I'm like, I'm not going there. This is what I'm doing. And they're like, well, you can't be an anthropologist and do that. I'm like, fine, I won't be an anthropologist, but this is what I'm going to do, you know? Thankfully, I had good support from another professor at that university who believed in my vision, Dr. Ehrenfeld, David Ehrenfeld, who's a wonderful ecologist, an amazing man. So off I went. I wanted to find, they said, the one thing I agreed with was I can't study every culture on the planet. I can't. You have to pick a narrow niche that you can then focus yourself. So I picked hunter-gatherer, nomadic people that had a tracking culture. So I was looking in Africa. I was looking, I wanted to find something in Europe and Asia, but I did find the Asian steppes people, and I looked at people in North America and Aboriginal Australia to find commonalities. But then I would break the rules of the anthropologist. If I found connective elements in culture, then I would look for them in Ireland and Poland because that's where my ancestors were from, right? I wanted to see, is this an explanation? And sure enough, I was finding stuff, the hidden in plain view stuff. So in '83, I opened a program based on this, and I met this elder whose name is Ingwe. And he had been raised by the Bushmen in South Africa and the Akamba in Kenya. And he spoke more that language than he did English because his parents were some of the early settlers, and the only neighbors he had were the African people. So when he saw my research, he was like, this is incredible." And he came out of retirement to help me, and we started our first children's program, and we got some incredible results right out of the gate. You know, because I will just say to all the Nesting Ambassador people, the moment I saw Darsha's research and when I saw what Lisa and Darsha had put together in Nesting Ambassadors, I'm like, here's all the science that proves everything that Sarah and I are doing. Like, thank you, right? Like, thank you. It's amazing. Although it doesn't seem to help solve all the world's problems yet. So we're just at the beginning of this, people. We've got a long journey ahead, and we've got to work together and collaborate because I'm overwhelmed by the whole system's change that's needed to get back what was lost, and it's not going to be easy. So that's a little bit about my origin story, though. You know, I would be remiss in not telling you this. When I was a very young boy, my father's grandmother, my father's mother, Cecilia McCormick, her grandmother had immigrated during the potato famine to New Jersey. And guess what? All the Irish were discriminated against. So guess what they did? They all farmed together in the little region that is now on the border of Colts Neck and Homedale, New Jersey. It was called Irishtown in those days. So they hunting, fishing, living off the land, you know, gathering wild foods as well as farming. Again, because subsistence was important. And my grandmother raised my sister and I because my parents were both working professionals, and so she was kind of our nanny, yeah, if you will, and we called her Nanny Cecil. And she was the most clever woman. She would send us out. She'd say, you know, if you kids would go pick Nanny some apples and pick the nicest apples, I'll make you the best apple pie, right? So off we go and pick apples. We come back in, present the apples to her. Oh, Jonathan, that's a beautiful apple. Where did you get that? How did you know to pick that one? And if Nanny, has to go out and find another one when it's time to make the pie, can you tell me exactly how to find that tree? Tell me how to go and give me landmarks. And that's what she did every single time we came back with something. And she was really cool because when you came back, she dropped down to the floor at your height and welcomed you. She always had a treat for you. And then she wanted to hear your story, and she asked you loads of questions. Like, you couldn't get away with just fudging your story. She wanted to know that she could go and retrace every step that you took, which is really clever, by the way. That is incredibly clever. As I was doing my research, I realized that that is a strong indigenous instinct in a grandmother to make their grandchildren do exactly that. And the neural networks that come from that, it's just unbelievable. So anyway, when I was older and doing my research, I went and talked to Nanny Cecil, and I said, Nanny, how did you know to do that? Like, in my research, I figured out that you did really, really smart, very, very powerful cultural things with us kids. She said, that's what my grandmother did for me. And that came from Ireland. So I thought, okay, cool. So some of these threads are making it through time, right? They're not all cut. But we have to know what these threads are in order to uplift them and celebrate them and strengthen them. And I'm going to share with you some of those threads today as well as Sarah. So imagine this grandmother is doing this for me. By the time I was 10 years old, I had caught every species of reptile and amphibian in the Golden Guide to Reptiles and Amphibians. Every single one. I had caught them, brought them home. Nanny helped me set up terrariums. She let me keep them for a couple of days. I had to give them a name. I had to be curious about them and study them. And as soon as I got bored, she made me take them right back to where I found them so that they could be with their friends and their family. This is what she said. And so I'm 10 years old, and I feel like I've been given the greatest gift in connection to the earth. And I knew I had to go further. And it was either organized sports or nothing. And I'm like, there was nothing that could satisfy my hunger as a naturalist. I knew there was deeper I had to go on the journey. And when I was 10, I met on the street corner because I had a very large snapping turtle. I couldn't get home. I met Tom Brown Jr., who went on to write the Tracker, and he ended up writing 19 books and opened the Tracker School and has trained hundreds of thousands of people worldwide. Created a movement, really. Tom passed away a couple of years ago. But he was my mentor from 1971 until his passing in 2024, right? And Sarah and I got to spend the last 3.5 years of his life with him. We took 67 courses with him because he wanted to make sure that I got everything I could before he left. What an amazing man, what dedication. And he himself had been mentored by an elder Apache from the age of 6. And so he was looking for the person that he had to train the way that Stalking Wolf had trained him. And he spent 3 years looking at all the kids, and none of them had what it took. And what it took, and according to Tom, you had to have passion bordering on obsession because what he was going to do was give me something to do. I would have to go do it, come back and report to him. Does it sound familiar? I had 10 years of practice because of my nanny Cecil. She got my flywheel going. She got my momentum going. So when I met Tom, I was so incredibly like blown away that here was a guy that could give me cool things to do that took me further and further. And I became a wildlife tracker, and I learned all about bird language, and I learned all the survival skills, primitive skills. I learned about the herbs and the medicines and the foods, and I ended up teaching at the tracker school from 1978 until Tom's passing off and on. So, that's my background. So you know, not just a random suburban boy from New Jersey that, stumbled into nature. I had a pretty blessed network of mentors, which I'm very thankful for. And I always just want to pay that forward and make sure that it keeps going, which is why Sarah and I do what we do today. After graduating college and starting my project, I continued researching. I spent time with the San Bushmen and the Kalahari in Botswana, and developed really close ties with a family there. And Sarah and I got to be with one of these wonderful elders just before he passed away, just a couple of years ago. So I'm really, really what you might call a cultural engineer, but I tend to work mostly with people online nowadays, and I work with a network of school leaders around the world that have based their schools on the research like that's in Coyote's Guide to Connecting with Nature, for instance. So we're trying to lift up the next generation of leadership right now. That's where we're at. So yeah, I think that's good for my opening remarks there. Sarah, do you want to say anything about Living Connection first, and what you're doing and how it ties into what I just talked about?
Yeah. Yep. Well, I grew up in Maine in the woods, and I was lucky enough to have that experience. I spent most of my time in nature. For about 5 years of my formative, my from like 7 to 12, we lived on an island, a very small island, so I was able to just be outside and wander freely. The boundary was don't swim away. We could just roam the island, and I had my little pack of friends, and that's just what we did. My sister and I were super close and played outside in the woods all the time. So nature was just part of my life, like a very interwoven part of my life. It was the core of my life, really. So then high school happened, and we moved off the island, and nature got a little further away, and I had traumatic experiences that distanced me not just physically, but also neurobiologically from nature. So it was about in my early 20s that I had the realization that I could no longer experience nature in the deep way that I had as a child. It actually startled me. I was hiking in the mountains in New Mexico. It was absolutely beautiful, stunning, aspen vista, and I couldn't feel anything. I couldn't feel anything, and I broke down into tears because I had become numb and I couldn't access that part of myself anymore. So in that moment of realization, it became a determination that I would find my way back to that felt sense of deep connection with nature. And so I tried lots of things. I spent a lot of time in nature, backpacking, and I actually hiked the Pacific Crest Trail, which is a 2,500-mile trail from Mexico to Canada through California, Washington, Oregon, and Washington. And those things really helped. But there was something more. I had found the tracker. My college roommate gave me the book, The Tracker, a few years before that. And reading that book by Tom Brown Jr. lit up these memories in my body where I was like, wow, this man knows something. He knows something that not very many people know, that is not part of the normal, social realms that I'm in touch with. So I found so much hope in that, right? This deep memory of my childhood that I'd been somewhat buried at that point was like this spark of a tuning fork of lighting me up of like, okay, this is real. This nature thing is real. So I had that in the back of my mind. And finally decided to go to tracker school in 2006, and then learned about Jon's work. In the meantime, I was a healer working with as a massage therapist. I actually became a massage therapist so that I could practice energy work. And I knew I couldn't at that time become a professional energy work practitioner. So I chose to work with bodies so that I could learn the whole realm. So my work is very much about embodiment and energetic experience. And those things for me very much overlap and merge with neuroscience, with the felt sense experience of deep connection. So I would say that point, well, I'll give you the end of this, the wrap up the story of myself and how it relates to this. Jon and I met in 2015 in Findhorn, actually, at a workshop that he was doing with Anna Breitenbach on interspecies communication and intuitive tracking, which were two things that I was just passionate about. I had seen The Animal Communicator, which is an awesome documentary with Jon and Anna. And so we made that connection. We're friends for several years, and now we're partners in life and work. So what the work we're doing together at Living Connection First, I would say, Jon, is the culmination of your life work. And it is about deep nature connection. And I think the people that are drawn to our work understand that it is one thing to know that we are connected to nature, that we are nature, and it is another thing to experience it deeply in your body as a living, active relationship that's part of lifestyle. So that is what we do. Like Jon said, it's pretty much all online. We do some things in person, but we have an online community. We gather 4 times a month. Or we offer gatherings 4 times a month to come and do nature connection practices together, and then connect as humans together as well. We do breakout groups. We'll do an exercise in nature, and then we'll do breakouts and a harvest, larger conversation harvest with everyone present. And so that piece of the people connection that Jon brings, I resisted deeply for a very long time because I was like the solo nature girl. I went to nature for peace, quiet, harmony, things that I did not experience with people. And even on that Pacific Crest Trail, it's 2,500 miles. It's 5 months of walking. People would be on the trail also, and I would just be like, can you camp somewhere else? I'd like to be alone here. It took me a long time. Like accepting those people became real to me because we were doing the same thing. We were experiencing the same hardships and the same celebrations, and everybody gets really raw and really real in nature. And so we were connecting at that place that we might call the natural mind, that place of ego has kind of drifted away. We're here appreciating the simplicity of the awe of life. So that was a doorway for me to see that people could be that way, the way that I remembered people to be as a child. My childhood friendships were that we would go to nature together and be in the purity of it, be in the presence and have just fun and no complication, right? Or far less complication. And that was my relationship with my sister as well. But growing out of that, being in college and other social experiences, I didn't think that there was a reality to be with people and nature in a real way. And I heard the words and I'm like, it kind of makes sense. But to actually convince my nervous system that was the safe thing to do took time. It took the real experience of being with people that would understand my stories and not make fun of me, not disregard them as invaluable. And when I say my stories, I mean my nature stories, right? The stories that were deeply meaningful to me, I typically would not share because most of my social contacts just did not have capacity or interest, right? They might entertain my story, but they wouldn't really feel it. I could feel that there was no actual resonance there. So I joined something called Village Talk with Jon in I think it was 2015. It was after that workshop where I was like, okay, I know this is good for me. Like I kind of have to take my vitamins. I have to do the thing that they say is good for me. Um, Knowing that that part of me was also like atrophying. Like my nature connection was like, it was too alone. Like I was aware of it being unshared, right? And when it doesn't have, when there's not context within a social realm, it starts to dwindle. We start to not go to that part of ourselves as often because there's such a strong drive to tribe, right? So in Village Talk, people are talking about nature and I'm sharing my stories and they're appreciating them and they're not judging them, they're appreciating them. And I'm getting like positive feedback, right? So my nervous system starts to change and I start to relax into like actually becoming like a nature person, right? And really embodying that and allowing it to be fully part of, I want to say like my identity, right? That it's okay to be this person. And so we see this in the Living Connection First community, people breaking out of these shells, coming into our community and saying, I haven't shared this story in 30 years, or I've never shared this story. And for us on the receiving end, it's like this magical, like dolphin experience, that is such a gift to receive, right? So they're putting these nature stories that they've never shared into this basket of like full appreciation and safety and holding it as sacred for them. It makes me emotional actually to reflect on how people change and how people open. And just the other day, someone said, I'm so grateful I found this community because I can tell you my stories and you don't think I'm crazy. Yeah. I think that's all I'll say for now. And I probably will have some more to say in later. Hand it back to you, John.
Sarah's not passionate about this, is she? Yeah, I love one of my favorite stories that Sarah tells is when she had a friend for so many years in Santa Fe.
Oh, my friend Andrea and I. Okay, so this was just before I met John. I met Andrea, and we worked together for like 5 years. And we went climbing together. We were buddies. We hung out. And after I started going to Village Talk, like I said, it became okay to talk about nature and natural for me to talk about nature. The kind of block or assumed that we don't talk about that kind of thing went away. And so one day I naturally tell a nature story to Andrea about some tracking adventure I went on, and she was like, "What?" And I'm like, I know, it's weird, but I'm not feeling self-conscious, right? I'm just like, I know, it's weird. It's like, I'm a nature nerd. She was like, no, so am I. She's like, my grandmother took me out in nature all the time and sent me on all these errands. And I know all the songs of all of the birds. She's like, you're a nature person? So we were both these like closet nature people that we never talked about nature together. And from that moment on, it was like, okay, let's go for walks in the woods. Like, let's do this together. And she's still one of my closest friends to this day. But I would never have known, right? If my nervous system hadn't unfurled. And she said the same thing. She said, I don't ever talk about it because people think I'm weird.
Let that sink in. How could two people be buddies for 5 years and keep nature secrets? Why are we like that? What happened to us? And that's more common than I want to admit. I'm just really sad for the children of the future. That's what drives me. That's what drives me. All right, let me do a little slideshow for y'all here. All right. This time I think I got the right one, right, Sarah? Yeah, good. All right. Well, here we go. Little adventure. So we're gonna talk a little bit. Like the stories we shared were not. Oops, sorry. They weren't random stories. We weren't sharing them to entertain ourselves, although they're fun stories to share. We really want to kind of point out some things, as I said before, that are hidden in plain view. All right, hidden in plain view. They're everywhere around us, but we don't think about it. Um, I'm just trying to get my screen view to work better here for me. Okay. All right. So, um, notice the two arrows behind me on the wall here. Notice the two arrows. The child goes out. The child comes back. The grandmother catches the story. The child goes out. The child comes back. The mentor catches the story. This is a organizing principle for how we naturally and how indigenous people naturally connect their children to the earth. Of course, cultures like the San Bushmen that I visit, everybody does this. There isn't a child who doesn't have multiple grandmothers, multiple aunties and uncles, multiple grandpas who do exactly this. The entire culture is in full agreement. There's no such thing as hiding your love of nature from your buddy, right? That's a purely modern problem. But so for 190, what is it, 300,000 years, Lisa? I can't remember the number now. This is how we were, right? Now, in 1996, I'm teaching with Tom Brown, and I told him a little story. He said, "How you doing?" You know, because he flew me down to California. The instructor that he usually depended on for the plant lecture wasn't able to make it, and he contacted me, said, "Any chance you could come down and teach the plant lecture for me?" And I'm like, "Sure, when?" You know, and he gave me the dates, and I said, "Sure, I'll fly down. You know, it'd be good to see you." He said, "Yeah, and don't get a hotel. Stay with me. You know, I have an extra bed in my room. You can just stay with me." And I'm like, "I'm not going to stay with you because you're going to play tricks on me." Which, by the way, of course he does. He always does things that are really funny, to keep your awareness peaked. So he said, "So what are you doing?" I said, I'm living with this firefighter from West Seattle, and in his little suburban backyard, he's got a sweat lodge called an Anipi, and he's got a Lakota healer family there. There, Godfrey Chips and his mother, Victoria Chips, and Gilbert Walking Bull, and Waylon Red Elk, and they're all living there, and they're running ceremony for people who are suffering from different illnesses and depression and things like that. And he said, "Yeah, that's neat." I said, "Yeah, Tom, if I could just do those because since I live there, I'm invited to all these ceremonies. I could just go every day to ceremony. I would do that for the rest of my life." He said, "No, you wouldn't." I'm like, "What? What do you mean?" He said, "You'd go crazy." I'm like, "What do you mean?" He said, "Didn't I ever show you the two arrows?" And I'm like, "No, I don't remember you ever showing the two arrows." So he drew on one of those little hotel napkins that you find in the room with the logo of the hotel. The top arrow and the bottom arrow, draws them in a pen, and they don't touch for a reason. And he said the top arrow is ceremony and the bottom arrow is awareness. This is something that grandfather taught me. And he said they have to be in balance. And he said, "This is the way that grandfather mentored me, and John, this is the way that I mentored you." And I'm thinking to myself, I don't remember ceremony. I didn't see my first sweat lodge until I was 18 because I grew up in a Catholic family. He didn't want to expose me to something that might challenge my family's religious worldview, you know? And I'm thinking, what the heck does he mean, ceremony and awareness? I don't remember anything around ceremony. So the two arrows, what they do is they cultivate coherence and they align us with the keeper, which is a way that Tom described what Dan Siegel would call the emergent mind. I don't know how many participants, according to my Zoom script, there's 17 of us here right now. Tom would say there's an 18th here, which is all of our minds together. And that's what they call the keeper. Okay. And there's something to that. So if you're with like 25 San Bushmen, the 26th one, the keeper of the San Bushmen, is a detectable field that is so strong. For instance, I spent 4 days with them, and I suddenly knew all the tracks of all the antelope there by, quick glance. Where did I learn that? They didn't teach that to me. It's in the field. It's like there's some conveyance going on culturally that we have kind of lost. Sports psychologists know about it. They call it the zone. Musicians call it the groove. When a team gets into flow, it's like they're being guided from a collective intelligence, right? It's been studied in wolves. It's been studied in flocking birds, and et cetera, et cetera. So Um, the top half is the people journey, okay? And the bottom half is the nature journey. That's obvious. John, go get me some apples. Grandma, people, catch my story, make the pie. Tom Brown, John, go see if you can figure out where that fox den is. I'm out and wandering the hills and looking all around, tracking days and days, looking for the fox den until I finally find it, coming back to Tom and having to tell the whole story, right? So you could think of the bottom half of the arrow as experience, because in that way it generalizes to any learning pathway, yoga or learning about diesel mechanics, and then mentoring on the top, right? And there's neurobiological affects here. Now, with the San Bushmen, when they went tracking during the day, and everybody was tracking, not just the hunters, everybody. The women were tracking, the men were tracking, the children were tracking. At night, they come back and tell the story around the fire as a collective village, right? So this two arrows thing. I also like to point out there's a choice point here, and I'll come back to that in a minute. Okay, so this one just says cultivating coherence community, which is what Sarah and I do with Living Connection First with our colleagues there. All right, so deep nature connection results in people wanting to care for other people and care for the earth, unless they get into that place that Sarah was talking about, where people are giving me a hard time. Nature never does. People bad, nature good, right? That's what we're trying to avoid here, right? So what happens if all I do is ceremony, ceremony, ceremony every day? Why will I go crazy? So according to Stalking Wolf, if people just immerse themselves in ceremony, they become dogmatic. And if they become too dogmatic, they'll start wars. This was Stalking Wolf. He was born in the 1800s, okay? But if all you do is practice awareness, you'll develop such sensitivity, you'll come to hate the human race for all the destruction they're doing to the earth. People bad, nature good. But if you do both of these things, you can deepen your nature journey and you can deepen your people journey. All right. So deep nature connection needs deep mentoring. It needs a basket of cultural support, right? Deep nature connection leads to the need for leadership initiation, because if people go on the deep nature connection journey and they get stuck there in that place where they love nature so much, but they can't stand what modern life is doing to the earth, they're going to have a hard time functioning. So they have to work through all their trauma and grief effects to find their own vision and gift that they can come back and be leaders in the world. I've been helping that for a long time, and this ends up causing the culture of support to regenerate, right? So, what's happening with Sarah and I is that we've been mentoring people for the last 4 years through this village thing, and now they're starting little circles in their neighborhoods, and quite organically, right? They're like, oh, it's safe for me to talk to people about nature. I'll talk to my friends. We'll go bird watching together. We'll go hiking together. We'll wander together, right? We'll garden together. And that's starting to pick up because they're realizing the people journey is needed, right? So it's hard to do messaging and outreach around this work because it's hidden in plain view, and our modern culture does not support connection. It's not valued. Our language doesn't even support it, right? So this is what we do. I'm going to show you some of our design elements that help us regenerate these connection circles. And we talk about living culture because it's not static, it's not rules-based, it's not externalities and legalistic, it's internally driven, it's based on feeling, it's based on trust, it's based on the unfurling of the nervous system. And I wish I had all day to work with you on this, because I'd bring in 4 arrows right now and have him show you the 2 charts. The modern worldview chart, the dominant worldview chart, and the indigenous worldview chart. What we have observed is that people in our facilitation process go from identifying on one chart and slowly but surely moving to the other, and they don't notice it happening. Right? So, I already told you that. Okay, so how is the top half of this arrow? How is it ceremony? How is my grandmother meeting us at the door in her apron? You know, she's washing dishes in the kitchen. She hears the kids come in. She's drying her hands as we come through the door. She squats down to greet us with open arms and a big heart and sparkle in her eye. How is that ceremony? How is me coming back from being out in the field on the afternoon when I'm 12 years old, getting a phone call at 6 o'clock from Tom Brown? How is that ceremony? So when these two arrows connect, a cycle of emerges that is a positive feedback loop that results in deep connection on both sides, okay? This causes an ascending spiral to move into our nervous system as it unfurls, and our health and mental health well-being indicators rise, okay? So we call that the upward spiral. So here's what we figured out. It took us a while to figure this out, but we looked at the upper arrow and we thought about catching stories as ceremony, and we discovered that there was 10 key cultural elements that would turn catching a story and a conversation from intersecting dialogues where people were talking over each other or thinking about what they were going to say while the other person is talking, which is not ceremony. That's disconnective ceremony. That's not ceremony. That's disconnective conversation, or what I like to, we say, talking past each other, right? And there's a lot of that going on. Listening is a skill that is not developed in modern times. So ceremony is sacred to indigenous people, right? So what is ceremony in neuroscience? So as I interviewed indigenous healers and holy men and holy women and, different ceremonial practitioners globally, I kept asking them what is sacred to them. And everything they described were the things they were connected to. In fact, in one language, the word actually translates to the ropes or the strings when they try to say sacred. It's the connection to nature, people, self, ancestors, unborn generations, the mystery, right? These are the things that are quote unquote sacred, but to be connected to them is sacred. And this is what makes it ceremony. So if you get a group of people together and you do a simple orientation and you develop just a few agreements, you can turn conversation into ceremony in not tied to any religious point of view and not even overtly spiritual. It just gets spiritual over time because people unfurl into trust. First thing we have to do, though, is attend to the 5 needs of the nervous system, which, by the way, are also recognized by indigenous teachers. And Shor Charnow, who was mentored in the Anishinaabeg Odawa Medewan tradition, talked about the 5 needs as a commonly understood 9,000-year-old mnemonic based on a hand petroglyph. But then if you look at interpersonal neurobiology, it fits the same bill. Everybody needs to be seen. Everybody needs to be heard and understood. I wouldn't just say heard. I think it's not that I hear a sound coming from your mouth. It's more like I'm heard and understood, because there's a felt sense when that happens, right? Everyone needs to know that they can contribute meaningfully, that they have a role. Bringing back those apples, coming back with the story. Everybody wants to be valued for their contribution, and everybody wants to belong. But they won't get to that 5th one unless they're seen, heard, valued, and contributing on a consistent basis to where they can trust, unfurling the nervous system, as Sarah said. Belonging is a deep felt sense. It's not an idea. And it's complete in a complete alignment with the interpersonal neurobiology. Sarah, you want to hop in and explain why or how?
If you're going to talk about the 10 stones, I can do that after.
Okay, that's fine. Okay. All right. So here's the 10 stones. Very plain and simple. I looked at a chart of 64 cultural elements that we were teaching out to the different school and community leaders worldwide through a program called The Art of Mentoring that ran from 1995 until the pandemic. So we always worked with the same 64 cultural elements, and we ended up making videos on those 64 cultural elements under a project called the 512 Project. And we looked at, during the pandemic, we looked at what are the things that we can do that will help people connect at this time of extreme disconnection that we could attend to virtually. And so we looked at the user data for who was looking at what 512 video, right, out of these 64 videos. And so we found the top 25 videos. So these seem to be the videos that people were mostly enjoying and spreading around to each other. They all had views, but some of these were way up there, like 10 times as many views as the others. So we made a list of the top 25 of the 64, and then we narrowed it down to the top 10, 12, and then we had some discussions with various people who were working with these tools around the world. Again, these are universal cultural elements. You find them in all the cultures around the world when the culture's intact, okay? So it's a reflection of our nervous system. So these are the 10 that we picked. The first foundation stone is welcoming. Go back to my grandmother. What did she do when we came in the door? She became very present. She stopped what she was doing. She let us children know with body language, eye contact, and felt sense that we weren't only welcome, it was a joy to see us. Tom Brown did the same thing with me when I called. He always asked how I was doing. I could feel that welcoming even through the phone. I knew he was welcoming me. He had a very welcoming presence. Wiping off the road dust. That just means, what am I carrying that's keeping me from being present? What can I let go of? And we like the way Jake and Judy Swamp of the Gonyegahaga Mohawk community described this. We worked with them for 10 years in collaboration. They said, we call it wiping off the road dust. When somebody comes to your house, after you welcome them, the very next thing they're going to want to do is tell you about their plane ride and their taxi ride. He said, don't ignore them when they do that. Listen to their story, because that's them letting go of something that's keeping them from being fully present. And it was funny, yesterday, Sarah and I welcomed our friend Jeff. He had just gotten off the plane the night before. And what did he do but tell us his road dust story? As soon as we gave him a chance to sit and talk, the two of us sat down with him outside on our patio. Out come the road dust stories. And we didn't even prompt it, right? It's just what we do. And then it helps that person to arrive, right? And it might be as simple as, what can I let go of? Right? What can I let go of to be more present in this meeting? Simple as that, right? I'm going to let go of my to-do list. It's been bothering me. I'm just going to say, okay, I'll get back to you later. You'll be there when I'm done. Phew. Right now I can pay attention to you all. Third one, gratitude. Sharing gratitude is one of the most powerful practices. When we open up our village, everybody says, I am somebody, this is where I am, and this is something I'm thankful for in nature right now. And as you read that chat, you can feel everybody reading that chat. The whole group comes into coherence. Shared gratitude is very powerful. These are things that my grandmother always wanted to know. What was the highlight of my day? Tom would do the same thing. What was really positive about your day? He didn't say, what's your gratitude? He just pulled out the positive after he pulled out my road dust. On the other end, the top half, unconditional listening. Unconditional listening. When you're talking to Nanny Cecil, when you're talking to Tom Brown, they're not thinking about what they're going to say next. They're going into the silent state themselves, and they are listening completely to me. I can feel them listening. Some of the elders that I worked with globally listened so well, I felt like I had a shop vac attached to my story, and they would pull things out of me that I wouldn't have normally said. So unconditional listening can get deeper and deeper over time. The more powerful the listening, the more powerful the mentoring, the stronger the ceremony, if you will. Culture of allowance. As a mentor, somebody comes in, I'm all excited to talk about bird language because it's that time of year. But when they show up, what they want to talk about is the animal tracks they found yesterday. Right? Culture of allowance. Meet people where they're at. Support them in what they're excited about, not what we think we have to impart on them, right? So mentoring is not expertise in being imparted. Mentoring is listening, watching for what they're excited about. and then going with that, trusting that. What happens when we do that is that it surfaces the gifts of that person. They become more themselves. As we do that in community, as we help see the gifts in others and lift them up, they are doing the same for us, and that lifts up our gifts, which is a real blessing. So I want to pass it to you, Sarah, so I can clear my throat. You can share interpersonal neurobiology.
Right on. Okay, well, I'm going to put the 10 stones here in the chat for folks if you want to copy and paste it.
Thank you.
I know you were thinking that. So, when I was learning about the 10 stones, first, one of the things that I love about the 10 stones is that Jon and one of the councils that he meets with regularly really worked through it in a very real way together. So it was tested like very intimately, and then brought to larger groups. And so as I was learning about it, I also was learning interpersonal neurobiology from Dan Siegel, and I was like, wow, the 10 stones are so in alignment with interpersonal neurobiology, and specifically one of the concepts within interpersonal neurobiology that Dan talks about, which he calls parts, which is a way of creating coherent relationships. And Dan speaks mostly through the therapeutic lens, working with other humans. So to have a coherent relationship that builds trust and leads to the emergent mind, which is, like, again, that third person in the room, the whole that is greater than the sum of its parts, to have that in relationship with others. And so what he says is necessary for that is parts, which is presence, attunement, resonance, and trust. I also put that in the chat. And so presence, being fully present with another, like Jon was talking about in this first 2 steps of the 10 stones, welcoming, right, being present for the other, wiping off the road dust. Okay, now I'm even more present. And then gratitude is presencing, the best mind, right? Our highest mind in a way, right? So we've become fully present. And then the attunement and resonance is in that place of unconditional listening, and culture of allowance. And also I feel within lifting up the gifts in others, because you're attuning to the other, you're acknowledging them as an individual, right? Without attachment, which is that culture of allowance. And then you're resonating, you're allowing yourself to feel whatever it is that you feel in relationship to that person, from their words, from their presence, from their story, which feeds back to the 5 needs that Jon was talking about, that need to feel heard, to feel felt. When we feel felt, when we are felt by another, we're sharing a nervous system, we're co-regulating, and that is an integration and healing process. And then, thanks for adding that, Jon. Then trust is built through the felt sense of connection, through feeling felt and feeling not judged, right? Just simply being heard and being felt at that level. That's how we build trust in a biological way, and it takes time, right? All of this takes time because it's a true experience, it's an embodied experience rather than just a mental understanding of I should trust my therapist. It's like, oh, my body trusts this person. And so the place of trust is where Jon is coming to here. But essentially, the place of trust is where we can have the emergent mind. If we don't have that coherence and that level of deep trust, we have at least a compromised emergent mind. And when we are fully in trust with another, we have the potential, huge potential for emergent mind that is co-creative and catalytic, and we can change the world. I'll hand it back to you, Jon. Is your throat clear?
Yes. I haven't tested it, but yes, seems like it is. And that was Lisa, by the way, who shared that. Thank you, Lisa.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. And I want to also pause now, just thank Douglas in the context of this, because starting with a mindfulness meditation, bringing us into images of nature and beautiful words and poetry like that is a way of getting us to land in a connected way. right? So this is a beautiful thing that you guys have incorporated here, and it's very much in alignment with the 10 stones. So just want to appreciate that.
We should probably do a time check, Lisa. How are we doing on time?
We have 7 minutes according to my watch. Am I right? Yeah.
Oh.
Okay. Hey, look at 7 minutes, seventh stone. All right. So this one is peace tending and relational modeling. And, we could talk for days on this one, but I'll say the simplest way to think about it is when we come into a conversation that's connective, we have very much the power to influence the others in our circle. If we're with a bunch of people who are sensitive and listening and really feeling, and we come in angry, they're all going to feel it even before we open our mouth. And we have a responsibility, if we know we're moving into a connective circle where there's agreements, we have to agree that we're willing to tend to our own peace. So if I care about you people, and I do, I'm going to make sure that I'll spend a little time in nature before I show up here so I can be in my best self. I don't want to show up stressed and anxious. I've been invited here. I really care about the Nesting Ambassador program. I feel a sense of responsibility to get into my peace before I show up. Sarah, guess before we came here, she said, I'm going to meditate. Same thing. We want to put ourselves in our best state before we arrive. For me, I get that by going outside, opening all my senses, listening to the birds. Oh, it's not hard right now with the beautiful song of the black-headed grosbeak and the gorgeous behavior of the father juncos with the offspring. The little juveniles are so cute. And the beautiful flowers that are blooming and all the pollinators that are around, the blue sky and the raven on the wind. Just get all that in my body, right? You know that feeling, right? You can just get that feeling in your body. I carry that in myself and I offer it to you in my conversation. This is what we mean by peace tending and relational modeling. If I, during this meeting, suddenly get triggered or I have to cough, I'm going to take what I need in that moment to restore my personal peace, right? And in the circle, everybody understands that. If we get to a place where the conversation suddenly triggers somebody, we take a pause for a moment and we all take a breath together. Or maybe we adjourn for 10 minutes. Everyone can go outside, go back to peace again. And when everyone's feeling back to peace, they naturally come back together. And then we all look around and everybody body nods. It's like, let's resume, right? That's what we mean by this one. And you know what's really interesting? Just knowing that that's one of the agreements, we almost never need to use it. Isn't that ironic? We almost never need to use that, wave the little flag for a minute. We better take a break because there's some tension in the room. We never reach that place because we all trust the container so much. In modern times, Brian Knittel, one of the people in the council that Sarah was talking about. By the way, we worked on this for so many years, and then we tested it with so many hundreds of people. You just need to know that. Brian Knittel says, John, I look at your 64 cultural elements, and I don't see this one. And he said, in modern times, I think we need the 65th cultural element, which is facilitation as a cultural element, because people don't have practice in the awareness ceremony cycle. And so they don't know how to be in a connective container. And two things are going to happen. Either one, they're going to talk the entire time. If there's a 15-minute breakout, they have so much backlog to catch up on and they're feeling listened to for the first time in maybe 10 years. And they're like a bottle of club soda that you shake up and take the lid off. They effervesce and they can't stop talking. Which is beautiful. I love that, actually. A lot of facilitators say, what do I do when a person does that? I'm like, well, if it was me, I would just let them do that because eventually the bubbles all get out and then they settle down. It's like they have a backlog, But, light facilitation is necessary with modern people, and it's Sarah has a spiel that she always gives at Living Connection First, which is 10 stones in a nugget. Go ahead, Sarah. Pretend we're going into breakouts at Living Connection First.
Oh, just the very, very basic to make sure that each person gets about equal time to share and to not speak over when one person's sharing, allow them to share completely without interjection. That's it.
That's the 10 stones in Sarah's nutshell. And it works. So our next stone is one of the ones that emerges over time. In the beginning, we just tell people just to be curious and listen, and be compassionate. If someone says something during their share that triggers your curiosity, when they pause and when they're done, ask them a question about that thing that made you curious, if they're open to a question. You can't believe how powerful that is. Over time, when the emergent mind is growing strong in everyone, it's almost as if the ancestors' wisdom is putting things into people's intuition. And it becomes a healing circle when people develop that level of listening. It becomes a healing circle, and it's very beautiful. And boy, when you see 12 and 15-year-olds doing this in circle, it'll bring tears to your eyes. It'll make your hair stand up. It's like they sound like ancient, wise people of the earth, right? And it's such a beautiful evolving stone. We trust curiosity, we trust our intuition, and we're compassionate towards one another. 10th one is obvious. Hey, we brought this circle together in a good way. Let's close it in a good way. It's been really good to share with you. Everyone just says something they're thankful for in a circle real quick, or maybe just one person says, hey, we brought our minds together in a good way. Let's separate our minds and know that we can carry this good feeling we're having out as we separate our minds and go our separate ways. It's a really important thing. It happens in every ceremony. There's always a closing. So when someone just walks away from the conversation, I call it the mic drop, and they don't have closure, it feels so disturbing to the other person. It's like, is this conversation over? Like, what just happened? Where am I? It's very disorienting. So it's very important to respect others in the circle and close in a good way. What happens if people go out and have nature experience and come back and share their story over and over and over in a circle like this? They develop the 8 attributes of connection. And they add another one, which is awareness. They are paying better attention on all levels, not only to what's going on in nature, but what's going on in themselves and what's going on with the people around them. I'll share these slides with you, Lisa, if you want to make them available to people. So yeah, I think that's probably good for us right now in terms of slides and things like that.
I just wanted to add 2 points. One of the coolest, in my opinion, programs that we run at Connection First is called Embodying Unity with Nature, which was inspired. It is based on the 10 stones, but applying them to our relationships in nature. So one of the healing aspects of this work is that we can build resilience with nature. So obviously nature is really good for all of us, and for people that, we can build nervous system resilience essentially by spending as much time as possible in nature, in a state of connection and awareness. And so embodying unity with nature is practicing these 10 stones with nature, right? So nature becomes part of our culture. And we also practice these skills of connecting with the other, with the more than human world, as well as with people, with the human world, right? So for many people, that's actually much more accessible to say, find a sense of welcoming with nature, with the beings of nature, and really actually allow yourself to feel that fully in your body, to get that moving, right? And then from that place, can I also welcome the human world? And not that it's always like that for everyone, right? But many people do find that really helpful. And that other point being, again, that nature is our kin, right? The beings of nature, we do include also in the culture. That was all I wanted to say. So thank you.
Thank you, Jon and Sarah. Oh my gosh, I could totally take up the rest of our time with my own questions, but I think I'm going to put, I have a lot I'm going to follow up with you about later. So let me ask everyone else, all our nesting ambassadors, I'm sure you have questions for Jon and Sarah. What would you like? Let me see if there's anything in the chat that I missed over here.
Well, we want to say hi to Justine. We've known Justine for a little while at Connection First.
Hi. Hi.
Yes, I've
Hello.
seen your interviews. Yes, you all are doing great work. How wonderful.
I have a question, if
Yes.
I can. Yeah. I was wondering how, now that you're both evolveness ambassadors, how you integrate that to your work with connection first or with the deep nature connection, or yeah, if you integrate some parts or in both ways, is it working?
Well, Sarah and I were talking about that last night. Like, it, the, we run a project through our Living Connection First called Village Building. And what I want to do with village building, because it is essentially like it's a total mirror image of the evolved nest. The only thing we weren't doing in village building that evolved nest is doing is the prenatal and perinatal side. And I thought, there is a really ripe, I don't know what the word is, nexus there. And so I've been talking with Root and Shore and Aiden about wanting to get them funded to do the Nesting Ambassador program, because they literally, I mean, we should be signposting at the very least to what is going on with Lisa and Darsha and this whole network and Four Arrows. And I think we're also a little bit slow. Sarah and I decided we better change our bios because we're nesting ambassadors now. We didn't even put that in our bios. And I want to be able to have it so that people can hit the little blue thing and go over right away to see what nesting ambassador is. And we've decided that at the very least, we'll put up a page that points over your way. We've just been really busy, crazy busy. So
The other thing that is a really good possibility is working with Arnaud and Christina, Arnaud Gagne and Christina, who also were in the Nesting Ambassador program and are working. Well, Arnaud is working really closely with us right now, so that's probably to have them lead something around the pre and perinatal part would be ideal for us. And again, it's like a bandwidth issue at the moment.
I think Douglas has his hand up. Douglas?
I just want to thank the two of you for that. That was pretty profound. When you said, not a random suburban boy that stumbled into nature, I had a strong network of mentors. That really resonated with me. So my father is a plastic surgeon, and I'm a plastic surgeon. And I look after kids with birth defects and traumas and so on. And I'm not a random suburban boy that just stumbled into plastic surgery. I had a strong network of mentors. That is a really good line for a lot of things in life that give people meaning, not just, yeah. And there's something about nature there too. The thing that I wanted to ask you for an idea for, which I sort of got, is when you said, I don't ever talk about it because people will think I'm weird, like the place you were at, Sarah. And I do a lot of work in climate and social justice, and the group Reclimate, who studies communication, has called what's happening now about climate, they call it the spiral of silence. And I wrote that down on like page 2 of my notes. And when you got to the comment about facilitation and you showed that picture with the spiral going down, so we need the spiral going up. And I'm wondering if you have any ideas about, like, the facilitator, yeah, but I'm wondering if you have ideas about how to improve that.
Douglas, how many hours do you have? I mean, we have an entire design for the upward spiral. That's why I said I'm a cultural engineer who's mostly working behind the scenes with other leaders. It is so complex, this issue. And it's a bit overwhelming, but we can, if we really understand, like Luby McNamara, the great permaculture designer, says, if you don't understand the limits, your design is not very valuable, right? So we've identified all these limits. What causes the spiral to go down? And how do we get it to go up? And guess what? The good news, what I just showed you, the 10 stones, the 2 arrows, turn those guys sideways and rinse and repeat. And what do you got? The upward spiral. Right? And it just takes time. Like, people who immerse themselves in a connection circle will naturally, sort of intuitively, start to do that with everybody in their life. That's the good news. So connection is regenerative, right? That's what I'm saying. However, disconnection is also regenerative, and both are happening right in front of our eyes right now. And disconnection is winning big time. We have to understand where connection comes from and what builds the unfurling of the nervous system, because it's not a one and done. It's not like you can take a weekend workshop and you're healed. It's the healing happens at the speed of the nervous system, not on a timeline, right? And trust. Sometimes people have had so many different kinds of trauma that they don't even know that they've had, and it could take them 2-3 years in a connective circle before they open up. And it kind of breaks my heart, but it's also beautiful. There's people who join our village and never come to our live online gatherings, but they watch them. They watch the recordings. And they might watch the recordings for a year. And then they'll show up and they won't participate. They won't turn on their camera. Do you see what's happening? They're kind of watching from a distance. Is it safe? Is it safe? Is it safe? Right? And then one day they turn on their camera and they tell us, and everybody's so happy. But that's what's going on right now, man. That's just very sad, And I have a friend who's a healer in Scotland, Madeline Rustier, and she says that modern culture is basically socially normalized PTSD. Right? That's it.
Jill has a question for you. Jill?
Okay, y'all. Well, so much gratitude. It's so good to see both of you again, but that was, like other people are saying, really profound for me. So much of it so. But I just wanted to say one thing, Sarah, that you said. Thinking about this my entire life, just listening to you made me think of it differently. When you talked about that sort of trauma disconnected you from self, which then disconnected you from nature. And like that, for some reason in this moment, you just said it, like, I'm so aware of that connection between nature and self. And just the way that you explained it in your journey of, I'm assuming a trauma disconnected you from self, which then you couldn't be in nature anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Just a really, really beautiful new way for me of thinking of it.
Yeah, I love that too. I have not thought of it that way either.
Mm.
And I guess where my mind goes with that, because I can make sense of that in my own personal experience, because I identified so strongly with nature, that I was able to recognize the difference was the gift, right? That I was able to recognize that there was something that was missing, that I had this deep nature connection experience that was now gone. That was the only way I could track my way back, right? And so I think about the many, many people who have grown up in cities or whatever, not been exposed to what that reality is, reality is, natural reality is, that they don't have even the context to know that they're missing anything.
That's it. Yeah.
And that scares me, where I'm like, wow, they have no idea. And to think of the level of numbness, the level of disconnect, I guess that can explain why things can happen the way that they are, that look so crazy for people that are tuned in and sensitive. But I want to just listen to that point again, Jill, because you gave me goosebumps when you said it. And going away from nature is going away from self. I think
something
this greater truth that we're saying, right? That people that are not connected with nature are not connected actually with self.
And just the directionality with you talked about that story of that you had the connection and something happened. And so that disconnection with maybe self or what trauma did to self then disconnected you from nature, like because of those are the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I might be obviously putting my own experiences onto yours, laying them onto yours, but just when you said that, it was incredible. Thank you guys. That was lovely.
Jill, it's just so true. Like, Shore, who's done a lot of therapy, work with children with fetal alcohol syndrome and various things. She basically said that a person's ability to heal from trauma is directly relinked to the capacity that they gain from connecting to the earth, and it works in both directions, that it's a positive feedback loop.
Mhm.
There's a lot in that statement, you know.
Mm.
But Sarah, that was a beautiful share too. That really struck me when you shared that. It really hit me. Yeah, thank you, Jill. Nice to see you. I'm glad you got to meet Dr. Bill
You
too.
too. Oh my goodness, so much wisdom just passed in this hour and a half. It was such a blessing.
Yeah,
And
thank you,
Jill,
Jill.
you're going to be here for our last praxis, which is going to be
Yeah.
in 2 weeks. So 2 weeks we get to hear from Jill and maybe a student or two who are learning
I'm
about
gonna
the evolved nest.
try and bring a couple students, so people that
Okay.
didn't know what they were getting, into, that got led through the evolved nest.
That's going to be so cool. It's going to be great. Thank you so much. Great to see you, Jill. All right, Tom has had his hand up.
Yes, I wanted to ask both of you if you could say more, and of course, this is a huge topic to begin with, but say more about the development of an embodied connection to nature, a somatic connection to nature.
All right. Let's see. Tom, good question. Nice to see you as well.
Nice to see you.
So in the beginning, people will start with their nature journey as very, very much in their logical mind, very kind of almost analytical, right? A plus B equals C kind of stuff. Given enough time, okay, I heard the mockingbird make that loud crouching sound, and I walked over and I looked in the bush and there was a cat. A plus B equals C. And they keep practicing, and their mind quiets down after a while. They keep getting more and more curious, expanding their senses outward, 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 listening for bird language in the far distance. Their mind quiets, and one day they're walking with that quiet mind, or the Tom Brown would call the sacred silence, and they don't even know they have that. It's just their mind has gotten quiet. And they get a sudden feeling in their body, and their head turns, and they don't even know why. And they look right in the eye of a bobcat, even before the bird language starts, because the bobcat was sleeping. There was no bird language. Their footfalls woke the bobcat. The bobcat gets up and looks at them like this. Then the birds start mobbing, not before that person detected it. So it's coming from the deepest part of our core over time. But it has to build, awareness has to be built first, not logical mind.
A sensory awareness.
Sensory awareness, exactly.
Is the question, how do you describe it?
Well,
Or
I
an
think
example?
what I'm after, I think, is the praxis. Like, how does one go about developing an embodied connection to nature? Yeah, enough said.
But Tom, do you have Coyote's Guide to Connecting with Nature?
Yes, I do.
Look at that whole thing called the profile, learning on the profile journey. It talks about the praxis of going from kind of a logical, intellectual part down to finding more balance, where your embodiment is happening in the fourth profile.
Gotcha.
And I would say, just to throw out a couple things: sense meditation, bird language, wildlife tracking, our praxis, and really what is within that is our sensory awareness is unfurling or expanding and fine tuning, learning how to tune into the fine sensory experiences that are available to us. That is actually the healing process, right? So it's like a return to our natural way of being. And it is a healing practice, right? So one way I would explain what is the difference between like nature connection, like I'm connected to nature, and like deep nature connection as the way that we hope to help people experience, is I can feel the swallow flying in my own body. That's one example, right? I can feel my cat walk across the earth. I can feel the anxiety of a fox in the bushes that I don't even see. I can feel that in my body. And there's that deep communication, obviously, that's happening within that. Yeah, that's all I wanted to say about that. And so it's like the body's experience, right? Not a linear, logical knowing. I wanted to respond to the how I'm talking about resilience. Just to be clear, resilience, the way I'm talking about nervous system resilience, is the ability to handle stress and maintain center. So it's not kind of fortifying against external things, but to actually be able to be open, to be empathic, and resilient, to be able to handle stress, so that when if I am able to feel a fox in the bushes and then I go to the mall and there's a whole lot of things to feel there, that I can handle it, that I can stay calm and I can stay centered.
Mm. You ever tried that in Costco?
Yes, I have.
All right, we have two more questions, and we're going to try not to keep Jon and Sarah over. Is that all right, Jon and Sarah?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Okay. All right, Diana?
I'll be brief. I wanted just to thank you so much, because I really appreciate what you shared today, and especially how. I mean, I really felt that embodied gift that you that part interested me a lot. Tending to oneself before offering the gift of our presence, and I felt it. Your enthusiasm and your presence is even through the screen, and I was fascinated by the emergent mind, because I'm very interested and into the practice of cardiac coherence and sharing cardiac coherence to create a collective field. And I have experience in feeling how it's possible, even through the screen, like this way we are doing today. And I related my experience with the cardiac collective field with your emergent mind, this expression you shared. So I'm curious to go deeper in what you offer. Absolutely. Thank you.
Visit us at livingconnectionfirst.net, please. I think you'd enjoy it. I think you'd feel that coherent field with that village. It's pretty cool. Yeah. Thank you, Diana. That's nice.
Mm-hmm.
Where are you?
And just so lovely to hear that it is felt, right?
Yeah. I'm in Italy.
Italy. Okay, cool.
I'm based in Italy.
And Malin is our last question. Oh, maybe. I saw Amy. Okay.
Well, hello, I'm Malin. I'm in BC, Canada, and yeah, this is so touching. I feel tears of gratitude. 'Cause, yeah, Jon, I have a nature school here. It's very small, but yeah, it was like magical how that happened, and the neighbor gave me the coyotes guide, and yeah, I watched so many of your things, and I will join the village, making just been so many other things. I also really connected to Tim and Janine in Idaho, the Twin Eagles, but still so much to learn. And yeah, so beautiful how so many threads come together, and showing that these are our biology, neuroscience patterns and nature's patterns. So yeah, but anyway, I can go on being grateful for another hour. But my questions are, yeah, I recently came across Gabriel Cram, or Teresa Gabriel, who I think he studied with the Wilderness Awareness School, and he's kind of evolving the polyvagal theory to include Darsha's work and deep nature connection work. So that's very exciting if you're interested in the nervous system. And so I'll just throw that out there. And then, yeah, as I mentioned in the link, systems thinkers at MIT talking about the social field, and presencing and absencing, another one. But and that for me seems to connect to also Dan Siegel's idea of the sense of self, and the sense of self in the Western world is like very separate and like a strong boundary. So Siegel talks about, I'm not sure how you say it, that, it's me and you, because I can feel you and my mirror neurons. But yeah, I also feel that there is like a me, we, earth, right? The ecological self, that's kind of the field. that I'm not, yeah, we're living together, we're evolving, we're being together. And some of that really struck me in your stories, how incredible that you had those grandmothers mentoring you, and then that you met Tom Brown on that street when you had the turtle, and you met Ingwe and so many other people. Like, it's so spiritual, right? This is mystery, and that's also very touching when our world today feels so painful and dead of mystery, right? Of that magic. So yeah, if you have any thoughts on that, but yeah, just happy to. I'm feeling these ropes to all this knowledge and all these people, all your lineage, and yeah, and everyone here who contributes. And so yeah, thank you.
I like that. I think we have to add an E in front of mui. We can call it imui.
Well, I've personally never
Ingwe.
loved the mui because it's too hard to say, mui.
Yeah.
But I totally agree with you that yes, Earth is in there and all of the beings of Earth. Totally. I actually hope to one day talk to Dan Siegel about that directly. I did get to ask him his thoughts on including the beings of nature, of wild nature in interpersonal neurobiology. And he told me to wait for his new book, which has since come out, and I do have that book. And it doesn't nail it in quite the way that I perceive it. So I'm working on that.
Sarah's working on a book, and she better get busy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear that. Okay, Amy, last one. We'll slide you in there. I think I psychically predicted you were going to ask a question. Here you are.
Oh, well, I know we're over, and I just wanted to share gratitude. I'm so grateful for this time with you and for the work that you've done. 10 years ago, my husband and I started a nature-based elementary school. We're located in Boston, just outside Boston, in the Blue Hills Reservation. And actually, one of our lead educators studied with you, doing the art of mentoring, Joel Sindelar. Not sure if that rings a bell, but so your guide was mandatory reading for our educators, and so just we're so grateful for the work you've done. But I think our school, the point of that was to keep intact what we come with, which is that embodied feeling, that kids know that, and we've written about how kids, when they're able to stay in touch with nature and stay connected to themselves, that all of that is already there, and so grateful for the tools that you've created that help with the healing for those of us who've lost our way and don't feel it as strongly. So I wanted to share that gratitude. And then I know we don't have much time, but perhaps we could follow up after. Sarah, I'd love to hear more about your energy work and how that factors in to returning to that embodied state. Because I also have worked as a postpartum doula and Reiki master, and using Reiki, self-Reiki and Reiki with others to sort of remind every cell of that brilliance, that. And so I'm just so curious how you weave that in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would love to have that conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a one-line answer. but we are, I could say easily that we are within that matrix, right? Of energy. Energy's everywhere. We're in the sea of chi. And the sensitivity and empathy that we develop with nature connection allows us to become more aware of that. And then also when we can feel and tune into the energies of nature, then we can learn to work with them. So like one of the energy work questions that has followed me through life is looking at acupuncture and the 5 elements theory, and seeing, well, okay, this theory makes so much sense, but does it really work outside? If I connect with the earth element on the ground right here, does it affect my stomach and liver really? So I could say that I believe that it does. I experience that it does. And that's just one way of weaving.
Me too. I'll agree with you on that, Sarah. I don't do foraging much. I don't take plants and extract from the land that I live on. I feel like I can sit now, but I've been here over 25 years, and I was being tutored the whole time. I've written about this on Kindred, that it was my consciousness that was being cultivated. I've been farming here and doing all kinds of different micro-eco techniques and over the years, including biodynamic. And then I realized, I'm not cultivating anything. I'm being cultivated. Oh, so that was a lovely switch. And so are we good? Yeah, everybody got their questions? I have a lot that I want to talk to Jon and Sarah about. So if you could stay after class for just a moment.
No, we're in trouble. Sarah, we're in trouble.
That's right.
Not again. That always happens.
We don't want to end with a mic drop, so we'll do our little circle for a moment. We do this sometimes. We put our hands to the outside of the screen of our Zoom, so we can hold hands in our quantum entanglement field, so we can be together for our week. We'll see each other next week as we go forward. Thank you all so much for coming. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.